Welcome back to Terra Nova Myths. Great to have you all with us for another chilling exploration, of the unexplained. Before we get going though, if you are enjoying the show, please remember to subscribe and give us a like. That really does help others find the show, and join us on this journey, into the shadows. So tonight we are diving into a topic that's it's both intriguing and really unsettling: the phenomenon of the twin brother.
Yeah, this idea of a twin brother, like a spectral double, it taps into something very primal, wouldn't you say? It goes beyond just the unsettling feeling of, like encountering a doppelganger, someone who simply looks like you. Lots of cultures view doppelgangers as omens, of misfortune or even death.
Definitely. And it's easy to see why.
Right.
The idea of someone out there who is essentially your mirror image is inherently unnerving. But these twin brother stories, they take that unease and they go a step further. They introduce this presence of an unseen twin, a figure that's not just physically similar, but also seems connected to you on a deeper level, almost a spiritual level.
Precisely. And what's fascinating is that this figure is often described as malevolent, a sinister presence that haunts the individual throughout their life. It's not just like a benign shadow. It's something that feels inherently threatening.
That's where it gets really interesting. We're not just talking about a ghostly presence, but an entity that seems to share your essence, your very being. Yet it's fundamentally other. And the fact that this twin brother is often unseen, lurking just beyond our perception, only adds to the sense of unease.
Think about the psychological impact of such an experience,
Yeah.
These individuals are confronted with something that defies rational explanation, something that challenges their understanding of reality. And when they try to share their experiences, they're often met with disbelief, dismissed as simply imagining things. That kind of isolation, coupled with the fear of this unseen entity, can be incredibly damaging.
Absolutely. It's like being haunted by a secret, a fear that you can't share with anyone. And to make matters worse, these twin brother figures are often described with very specific and frankly disturbing physical details.
Yes, these details are crucial because they provide clues to the entity's nature and purpose. For example, the face of the twin brother is often described as obscured, hidden in shadow or completely lacking features. This facelessness adds to the mystery and terror surrounding them.
It's like they exist just beyond our grasp, defying our attempts to truly see or understand them. And that lack of definition, that void where a face should be, only amplifies our fear, wouldn't you say?
Indeed. The obscured face speaks to the unknowable nature of the entity, the sense that it exists on the fringes of human perception. We're left to project our anxieties and fears onto this blank canvas, making the figure all the more terrifying.
And then there's the recurring motif of the twin brother having a charred or burnt appearance. It's a detail that's both deeply unsettling and strangely compelling. What could be the significance of this fiery imagery?
Fire across many cultures and mythologies holds a powerful symbolism. It's often associated with transformation, purification, and even destruction. So the burnt appearance of the twin brother could suggest that this entity has passed through some kind of ordeal, some transformative experience that has left it scarred and distorted.
So it's not just a ghostly apparition. It's something that has been through the fire, so to speak, and emerged changed. And those changes might not be for the better.
Precisely. The burnt appearance suggests that we're dealing with something powerful, something that has been forged in the crucible of some unknown force. And that power, combined with the malevolent nature often attributed to these twin brothers, makes them truly formidable figures in the realm of the supernatural.
Okay, so we've got this unseen twin, this malevolent entity with an obscured face and a burnt appearance. And to top it off, these stories often describe their expressions as being dualistic, combining grotesque joy with profound sadness. What's going on there?
That duality is incredibly intriguing. It suggests a complex, multifaceted nature, a being that embodies both light and shadow, both creation and destruction. The grotesque joy, often described as a mocking delight in suffering, is particularly unsettling because it seems to go against the natural order of things.
It's almost as if they're deriving pleasure from pain, which is a very disturbing thought. But then there's that profound sadness, a deep, all-consuming sorrow that seems to emanate from their very core. It's almost like they're trapped in their own torment.
That's right. And this duality could reflect the inherent contradictions within ourselves, the constant battle between our darker impulses and our desire for goodness. Perhaps the twin brother is a manifestation of that internal struggle, an externalization of our own shadow selves.
So are these stories just elaborate metaphors for our own psychological complexities? Or are we dealing with actual supernatural entities that feed on our fears and anxieties?
That's the question that lies at the heart of these tales, isn't it? Are they simply figments of our imaginations, or do they hold a deeper truth about the unseen forces that shape our lives? To delve deeper into that question, let's explore some specific examples from the stories we've gathered.
Great idea. One story that really stood out to me involved a man who was haunted by this twin brother figure throughout his life. And what's even more unsettling is that he later sees the entity's dualistic expressions, that grotesque joy and profound sadness reflected in his own unborn twin sons.
That story taps into a very primal fear, the idea of inherited curses, the transmission of evil across generations. It raises the question, are we bound by the darkness of our ancestors? Is there a part of us that's fated to repeat the patterns of the past?
It's a chilling thought. And then there's the story of the man who's forced to feed a chicken to a dark entity in a cave, a very specific, almost ritualistic act to save his grandmother's life. That story juxtaposes the mundane with the supernatural in a way that's both fascinating and disturbing.
That story highlights the desperation that can drive people to extreme measures when confronted with the unknown. It's a reminder that sometimes even the most rational individuals can be forced to confront forces beyond their comprehension.
And that sometimes those forces demand sacrifices that challenge our very sense of morality.
Indeed. And let's not forget the tale of the young girl who's plagued by a brother that only she can see. The story culminates in a terrifying encounter where the entity reveals its true horrific form, leaving a lasting psychological scar.
This speaks to the vulnerability of children. The way their developing minds can be particularly susceptible to fear and trauma. The girl's unseen brother could be interpreted as a manifestation of her own anxieties, fears that she doesn't yet have the tools to understand or articulate.
And the fact that she's the only one who can see it highlights the isolation and helplessness that often accompany these experiences. It's like being trapped in a nightmare that no one else can see or understand.
And the trauma of that experience can linger long after the encounter itself, shaping the individual's perception of the world and themselves.
Exactly. These stories, despite their diversity, share a common thread. The confrontation with something that defies rational explanation, something that challenges our very sense of self and reality.
And that challenge can be both terrifying and profoundly transformative.
Indeed. And we'll explore those transformations in greater detail as we continue our journey into the unsettling world of the twin brother phenomenon.
And speaking of journeys, if you're enjoying this exploration of terror and urban myths, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give us a like. It helps us reach more curious minds and delve deeper into these mysteries together. We'll be right back with more chilling tales after a short break.
These stories, they really make you think about the nature of reality, don't they?
They do. And while we could, spend hours just dissecting the psychological implications, I'm kind of drawn back to those unsettling physical details. It's like those details are trying to tell us something specific about these twin brother entities.
That's a good observation. Those details, they aren't just there for shock value, they're symbolic, offering us clues to the entity's nature and purpose.
Let's start with that obscured face. It's a recurring motif in these stories, sometimes shrouded in shadow, sometimes completely absent.
That facelessness, it's a powerful image, wouldn't you say? It taps into a primal fear of the unknown, the unknowable.
Absolutely. It's like looking into a mirror and seeing a void where your reflection should be. It's a reminder that there are parts of ourselves, and perhaps parts of the universe, that we can never fully comprehend.
And that inability to comprehend, to define, that's precisely what makes these entities so terrifying. We're left to project our own fears and anxieties onto that blank canvas, which only amplifies the horror.
It's like our own minds are creating the monster, filling in the gaps with our deepest fears.
Precisely. And then there's the recurring motif of the charred or burnt appearance. We talked about fire's symbolism, its association with transformation, purification, and destruction.
It's a stark image, suggestive of some kind of trial by fire, a passage through intense suffering.
It implies that these twin brother figures, they're not simply spirits or ghosts. There's something more, something that has been forged in the crucible of some unknown force.
And emerged, scarred, changed, perhaps even twisted by that experience.
Exactly. And those changes, combined with the malevolent nature, often attributed to these entities, makes them truly formidable figures.
They're not just shadows, lurking at the edge of our vision. They're forces to be reckoned with.
And then we have the dualistic expressions, that grotesque joy, juxtaposed with profound sadness. What are we to make of that?
It's a fascinating contradiction. On the one hand, there's this perverse delight in suffering, a mockery of true happiness. It's almost demonic, wouldn't you say?
It is unsettling, that's for sure. It suggests a being that is not bound by the same moral compass as humans.
But then there's that profound sadness, a sorrow that seems to run deeper than any human experience. It's as if they're carrying the weight of the world's suffering on their shoulders.
That duality is key to understanding these entities. They're not simply evil, they're complex, embodying both the light and shadow, the creative and destructive forces of the universe.
It's like they're reflections of our own internal struggles, the constant battle between our higher and lower selves.
That's a very insightful interpretation. Perhaps the twin brother is an externalization of our own shadow self, those aspects of ourselves that we repress or deny.
The parts of ourselves that we're afraid to confront.
Exactly. And by confronting these entities, in stories, we're indirectly confronting those hidden aspects of ourselves.
It's a way of processing our fears, our anxieties, in a safe, symbolic way.
And that processing, that confrontation, can be both terrifying and liberating.
So, are we saying that these stories are just elaborate metaphors for our own psychological complexities? Or is there something more to it? Could these twin brother entities actually exist beyond the realm of imagination?
That's the eternal question, isn't it? Where does folklore end and reality begin? I think the answer might be different for each individual. Some might find comfort in a purely psychological interpretation, while others might sense something more, a genuine connection to the supernatural.
It's like we're all searching for answers in the darkness, each of us finding our own way.
And perhaps that's the point. These stories, they aren't meant to provide definitive answers. They're meant to provoke thought, to challenge our assumptions, and to make us question the very nature of reality.
And speaking of challenging assumptions, let's dive into another intriguing detail that often comes up in these stories. The idea that these twin brother entities are attracted to or even feed on negative emotions. It's like our fear and anxiety somehow empower them.
That's a chilling thought. It suggests that by giving in to our darker impulses, we're actually strengthening these entities. It's a reminder that our thoughts and emotions have power, and that power can be used for both good and evil.
So it's not just about being afraid of these entities, it's about being mindful of our own internal state, our own capacity for darkness.
That's right. We have a responsibility to ourselves and to the world around us to cultivate positive emotions, to choose love over fear, and to focus on the light rather than the shadow.
Because the more we dwell in darkness, the more we attract darkness into our lives.
Exactly. But what if, instead of trying to suppress or deny our darker emotions, we confronted them head on?
What if we embraced our shadows, acknowledged them as part of who we are?
That's a radical idea, but perhaps there's wisdom in it. Maybe by integrating our shadow selves, we could actually neutralize the power of these entities.
Maybe they thrive on our resistance, our attempts to compartmentalize our emotions.
But what if we stopped fighting them? What if we simply acknowledged their presence, accepted them as part of the complex tapestry of our being?
It's like making peace with our demons, recognizing that they're part of us, but not all of us.
And maybe, just maybe, that's the key to overcoming their influence. Not through force, but through acceptance and integration.
It's a fascinating concept, but it also raises some important questions. What would it actually look like to embrace our twin brother? How do we go about integrating those darker aspects of ourselves without becoming consumed by them?
That's a journey we'll explore in our next segment. Stay with us as we delve deeper into the mysteries of the twin brother phenomenon and discover what lessons these unsettling tales might hold for us all.
It is a chilling thought, right? This idea that maybe by trying to suppress our darker impulses, we might be giving them more power.
Yeah, it is. It's a paradox. But it kind of speaks to the idea that what we resist persists.
So how do we break free from that cycle? How do we confront these shadow selves, these twin brother entities, without being consumed?
Well, it's not easy. It requires a willingness to look inward, to acknowledge the parts of ourselves that we might not like.
The parts we might even be afraid of.
Precisely. But it's in those shadowy corners of our being that we often find our greatest potential for growth.
It's like that old saying, the greatest darkness lies within the heart of the brightest light.
Exactly. Without darkness, there can be no light. Without shadow, there can be no depth.
So it's about embracing the totality of our being, the good and the bad, the light and the shadow.
That's the journey of individuation, as Carl Jung called it. It's about becoming a whole person, integrating all aspects of ourselves.
But how do we actually do that? Sounds like a pretty daunting task.
Well, it's a process, not a destination. It starts with self-awareness, with paying attention to our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors.
Noticing when those shadow selves start to emerge.
Exactly. And then it's about finding healthy ways to express those darker impulses.
Not by acting them out in harmful ways, but by channeling them into something constructive.
Precisely. For example, anger can be a destructive force, but it can also be a really powerful motivator for change.
Fear can paralyze us, but it can also sharpen our instincts and help us avoid danger.
It's all about how we choose to use those energies.
So it's not about denying our shadows, but about mastering them.
That's well said. It's about recognizing that those shadow selves are part of us, but they don't define us.
Not the whole story.
Right. And by integrating them, by bringing them into the light of consciousness, we can actually diminish their power.
It's like they lose their grip on us when we stop trying to hide them.
That's a great way to put it. It's like those entities, they feed on our secrecy, our shame.
But when we bring them into the open, they start to lose their potency.
And we gain a sense of wholeness, of integration.
We become more fully ourselves.
And that, I believe, is the ultimate goal of these twin brother stories. They're not just meant to scare us, they're meant to challenge us, to push us towards greater self-awareness and growth.
They're a call to confront our shadows and emerge stronger, more whole, more fully human.
Precisely. And that's a message worth remembering.
So as we wrap up this episode of Terror and Urban Myths, I want to thank you all for joining us on this journey into the dark and fascinating world of folklore and mythology. We hope you found it thought-provoking, maybe even a little unsettling.
And if you're feeling brave enough to explore your own shadow self, we encourage you to do so with curiosity and compassion.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We all have our twin brothers, our darker sides, and it's in those shadows that we often find our greatest strengths and our most authentic selves.
Well said. And if you enjoyed this exploration, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving us a like. It helps us reach more curious minds and delve deeper into these mysteries together. Until next time, stay curious, stay open-minded, and keep exploring the shadows.
Because it's in the darkness that we often find the greatest truths. Thanks for listening.